A few weeks ago, I worked a normal shift at the hospital. I've been a receptionist here for years, so the routine felt familiar. I logged in, set my desk, and greeted patients. The lobby buzzed with all kinds of noises, machines whirring, families talking. It was loud but comforting. That day, though, things shifted. On that Tuesday, I noticed a man at the end of the line. He had this empty look in his eyes. They felt like they were staring right through me. He held an old envelope but never spoke. I watched as people moved around him, but he didn't shift an inch. My stomach twisted. It was strange. As the week went on, I kept seeing more people like him. They stood in line with blank expressions. All I could do was check paperwork, or answer calls while my eyes drifted back to them. Pieces started disappearing in the hospital. Patients complained about lost belongings, IDs, phones, even toys. I shook my head in confusion, but my heart raced. What was happening? On day 3, a woman caught my eye. She looked familiar but different. Fear filled her gaze. She glanced over her shoulder like something was watching. I tried to comfort her. "Are you okay?" I asked. But she just stared at the ground. It felt wrong. Why wouldn't she say anything? Day 5 arrived, and everything felt heavy. I fought the urge to look away from these people. The line seemed endless. The complaints grew louder. A man near me suddenly dropped his bag. I looked over, and my heart sank. It was empty. Just like that, panic washed over me. Then, I saw the man from day 1 again. He was still standing there, unmoving. I felt a chill run through me. "Is everything all right?" I asked, finally breaking the silence. He didn't answer. His stillness unsettled me. Each time I looked up, more of them came. Anxiety twisted inside me. I felt trapped inside a nightmare. Where had they come from? I could almost feel the oppressive atmosphere bearing down. With a sudden rush of bravery, I stared deeper into that man's eyes. It felt like the world faded, and dread wrapped around me. "What's wrong with all of you?" I whispered. I felt like I was losing control of my own mind. That's when he turned to me. His gaze was firm, unblinking, and it sent a wave of fear through me. I was feeling dizzy now. The weight of so many empty stares pressed down on me. The line just kept growing. Where would it end? My breath caught in my throat. What did they want? Might I be next? The unsettling feeling gripped me as I stood helpless behind my desk, knowing I might never find answers. The next morning, the weight in the air felt thicker than before. I dragged my feet into the hospital, dread crawling beneath my skin. The lobby was quieter, but the stillness was more oppressive. I scanned the room. They were back. The same people with lifeless eyes filled the line. Those pitiless stares were locked onto the counter, waiting for recognition. But today, one of them caught my eye. It was the woman from day 3. Her face was pale, and the fear in her eyes seemed amplified. This time, she was clutching her hands together, knuckles white. She seemed closer to the front of the line. I wanted to help her, but how could I? As I busied myself with my morning tasks, I heard a little girl near the entrance start crying. My heart sank. She was clinging to a stuffed unicorn. Dodge it, I thought. I couldn't face another missing belongings scare. But then I saw the little girl's gaze drift toward the woman. It was as if they were somehow connected. What could I do? Before I could process it, the woman looked in my direction. Our eyes locked for a brief moment. A shiver ran through me. It felt like she was trying to communicate something. I leaned over slightly, attempting to read her lips. She was mouthing, "Help me." I took a deep breath. My fingers fidgeted nervously with the edge of my desk. The line was still moving, but the sense of urgency was palpable. Just then, a nurse approached me. Her brow was furrowed. "Did you hear about the recent disappearances?" she asked, glancing nervously at the line. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "Patients have been vanishing from their rooms. There's been talk of people seeing them standing, just like those in line. No one can seem to explain it." Her voice wavered. "We need to figure out what is going on." Before I could respond, there was a loud crash coming from the waiting area. A chair had toppled over. My breath caught, and I turned to see the little girl was down on the floor, her unicorn toy tossed aside. I moved instinctively, heading toward her. But as I approached, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was the nurse, her grip firm. "Don't go near them," she warned urgently. "Why not?" I stammered, confused. "Because they don't belong here. They're drawn to something, but I don't know what." Her words hit me like a punch. The line was still growing. I could feel something shifting in the atmosphere. Suddenly, I noticed the man from day one was inching closer to me. Those unblinking eyes now seemed to be searching for something. I stepped back, feeling the warm pulse of panic rising inside me. "You can stay close to the child," the nurse said, but her voice faded as I focused on the man. Why was he approaching? That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement behind him, a shadow shifting just outside the lobby door. My gut twisted. Whatever was unfolding, it was far worse than I had realized. And it was coming for us. The tension in the air was suffocating. I shifted my weight from foot to foot as I stared at the man closing in. The lobby buzzed with whispers, but my focus tightened only on him. What did he want from me? I felt the little girl's small hand tug at my sleeve. I turned to her, kneeling down. "Are you okay?" I asked softly, reminding myself to stay calm despite the chaos around us. "I want my unicorn," she sniffled, glancing nervously between me and the crowd. I could sense her fear, the way it tangled in the air. "Can you help me?" Before I could respond, I saw the woman from the line struggling against the small crowd. She pressed her way through, her expression pleading, locking eyes with the little girl. "Don't!" she cried out, urgency flooding her voice. The nurse grabbed my arm again. "Stay away," she insisted, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked from her back to the woman, torn. "What is happening? Why are you scared of them?" I asked, desperate for answers. The woman fell forward slightly, her hands grasping a nearby chair for support. "You don't understand. They want to take her," she gasped, her voice so low I barely heard. "Take her?" I repeated, dread creeping into my gut. The little girl looked back at me, confusion mixed with trust in her eyes. I couldn't let anything happen to her. Suddenly, the man from day one reached out a hand, fingers curling like claws. I instinctively moved in front of the little girl, blocking her from view. "Stay behind me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The man's eyes shifted, scanning the area as if he realized we were no longer an easy target. Then he turned, his attention snatched by the other patients in line, who seemed to grow restless and agitated. I felt a rush of movement behind me. The nurse had spotted something. "We need to get everyone out," she shouted, voice rising. "The exits! We have to move now!" Just as she shouted, lights flickered above us. Shadows stretched and danced along the walls, and I felt the air grow cold. The soft whimpering of the little girl pierced the sudden quiet. Blackness enveloped the edges of my vision. I spun around, catching glimpses of faces in the line, each one now exhibiting a grotesque smile. A dreadful aura surrounded them, making my skin crawl. That's when I remembered the shadow I had seen by the door. It hadn't come in, but it was here, lurking just outside, waiting. I felt a rush of dread. Whatever was happening, it was only getting worse. That I looked at the woman again, knowing I had to make a choice. The little girl was still behind me, her soft breath reassuring, but fear gnawed at me. What would happen if I made the wrong move? "Grab her," I said to the nurse, signaling to the girl. "We can't stay here." As the nurse reached for her, I felt a pull, a draw towards the growing darkness outside. The moment hung suspended. We needed to act, and fast. But deep down, I feared what would happen next, and if we'd make it out at all. I didn't give the nurse time to respond. I grabbed the little girl's hand, feeling her warmth against the cold dread that was creeping into my bones. "This way," I urged, pushing through the crowd. The woman was right behind us, her eyes pleading as if I was her last hope. We moved towards the exit, But the man from earlier was no longer just watching, he was blocking our path, face contorting into a grotesque mix of anger and excitement. I could feel the fear radiating from the crowd as they became less and less human, each nervous twitch morphing into something sinister. "Step away from her!" I shouted. The man took a step forward, and the crowd shifted with him, almost as if they were part of him, moving in sync. The little girl squeezed my hand tightly. "I want my unicorn," she whispered again, tears welling up in her big eyes. Her innocence felt like a beacon of light in a suffocating darkness. "Just hold on," I hissed, pulling her closer. Panic clawed at my throat. "We're gonna get out." Then I saw a flash of movement in the periphery, near a door marked staff only. A tall figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, and it moved with a familiarity I couldn't place. In an unexpected twist, it approached us instead of retreating. The air around me turned electric, vibrating with an unseen force. "Over here!" the figure called, urgency lacing their voice. It was a woman, her face obscured in the dim light. The crowd seemed to hesitate, as though they could feel her presence. I didn't know who she was, but desperation fueled my instinct to trust her. "Come on!" I urged the nurse as I began to lead the little girl toward the mysterious figure. The woman gestured for us to hurry, but the man was closing in too fast. I could sense the tide changing. The crowd grew restless. "Don't look back," I whispered to the little girl. I turned all my focus to the looming darkness, guiding them both to the safety of the door. Each step felt like a countdown. I risked a glance back, just for a split second. The man's eyes glinted with something dark, something hungry. I felt sick. "Now!" I shouted, and the woman opened the door just as we reached it. I pushed the little girl through first, and then the nurse. I'd barely made it in when I felt hands gripping my arm, yanking me backward. With a sudden surge of energy, I managed to break free, stumbling into the room as I collapsed against the wall. The door slammed shut behind us, sealing us away from whatever horrors thrived outside. I took a breath, heart racing, and then I turned to face the woman who had saved us. "Who are you?" I asked, struggling to catch my breath. She stepped forward, shadows clinging to her figure. "There's no time. We need to leave now," she said. "They will find you." Before I could ask what she meant, the lights flickered above again. The air rippled like water caught in a storm. What I started, but the woman's fearful glance cut me off. "That sound, it's happening again," she warned, pointing towards the door. As if on cue, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching, and my heart dropped. I felt the walls closing in. We had to figure out a way out, and fast. But what would we face next? Who were they, really, and why did they want the little girl? I steeled myself for whatever horror was about to unfold, replaying my choices, realizing the answers to my questions might not be what I wanted to hear. The footsteps came closer, echoing ominously in the confined space. I felt the instinct to curl into a ball, to hide and pretend this was just a dream. But the little girl was still there, clutching my hand with an urgency that jolted me back to reality. "Do you have a plan?" I whispered to the woman, my voice barely above a breath. She shook her head, her expression grave. "No." Her words were cut off by a loud bang against the door. My heart raced as I glanced at the heavy wooden barrier separating us from whatever was out there. "That's them," she said, her face pale. "They can't get through this door, but they'll try. We have a few moments at most." "Then we need to find another way out," I replied hastily, scanning the room. It was small and cluttered with medical supplies boxes stacked haphazardly, a computer flashing random data, and a single window barred with metal grating. The little girl tugged at my sleeve. "I want to go home," she whimpered. "Me too," I said, my heart sinking. "But we need to move." I had no time to comfort her. There were too many questions and not enough answers. "Follow me." We crossed the room, the woman staying close behind. But before I could reach the window, another heavy bang echoed through the door, shaking the walls. It felt like the sound reverberated in my bones. "Help me," I pleaded, grabbing the grating and trying to pry it open. It wouldn't budge. Do you know how to get this off? Yes, but not here. Her voice trembled. We need to find the exit. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, more violently this time, plunging the room into a momentary darkness. In that split second, I felt a cold breath on my neck. I whipped around, and as the lights snapped back on, I caught a glimpse of something monstrous in the corner, a shadow flickering like a flame. It was gone before I could scream. Did you see that? I gasped, turning back to the others. But the woman looked unfazed, as if she had expected it. Stay focused, she instructed sharply. We have to keep moving. This place is unstable. As I glanced back at the door, I noticed the girl was still staring at the corner where the shadow had disappeared. Her eyes were full of fear, but they also sparkled with something else, curiosity. What's wrong? I asked, kneeling beside her. Look at me, please. I think it wanted to play, she whispered. A chill rolled through my spine. No, honey, that's not a game. Before I could say more, the door rattled violently again, shaking on its hinges, and I jumped to my feet. The urgency hit me hard. Let us go, I urged. The woman reached for the door handle but hesitated, her breath hitching. Wait. They might be waiting for us, she warned. The pounding grew louder, and I thought I could hear muffled voices, chanting. I gripped the little girl's hand tighter and shot a glance at the room's other exit, a door that led into the unknown. Do we take that? I asked, my voice shaking. Yes, she exclaimed. Now. I pushed the girl ahead of me as we raced for the unknown door. The footsteps grew frantic as we reached for the handle, and just as I turned it, everything went black. The darkness swallowed us whole, and a wave of confusion washed over me. It wasn't quiet. Instead, I sensed movement around us, a palpable energy as if we were no longer alone. Then everything went dark. I blinked against the darkness, trying to push through the disorientation. The air felt thick, colder than moments before. And that sense of movement? It was now sharper, like shadows skimming my skin. Are you okay? I whispered, reaching out for the little girl. Her small hand felt thin and trembled as I found it. Yes, she said, but the quiver in her voice told a different story. The woman was silent, and I wondered where she was in the void. A sudden rush of sound, footsteps, echoed in the distance. The faintest glimmer of light pierced the darkness ahead, drawing me toward it. I grasped the girl's hand tighter and stepped forward cautiously. Stay close, I said, though I could barely hear my own voice. We moved forward, shuffling until the light grew warmer. It revealed a narrow corridor with peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights. My heart sank at the sight. It looked like an old hospital hallway, one that had been long abandoned. I could feel the weight of dread settle in my stomach. What kind of place was this? It didn't feel right. The further we walked, the more I noticed strange pictures lining the walls, children in hospital gowns, their eyes hollow and lifeless. I turned away, a chill creeping over my skin. Keep looking straight, I told myself. Just keep going. The girl peeked at the pictures and clung tighter to me. They look sad, she said quietly. Let us not think about it, I said, swallowing hard. Just focus on getting out. We reached a door at the end of the corridor, marked with a sign that read "End of Line." The door creaked as I opened it, revealing what seemed like a break room, filled with old furniture and a stale smell that stung my nose. I stepped inside, scanning for signs of life. The woman joined us, her eyes darting around the deserted room. There should be an exit around here, she muttered. That's when I saw it, a small window at the far side, slightly ajar. I rushed toward it, heart racing, pulling the girl along. We might be able to get out through here. Wait, the woman said, her voice edged with caution. We should be careful. But I couldn't wait. I shoved the window fully open, letting in a gust of cool air that felt exhilarating. I turned to help the girl step up, but just as she reached for the sill, the lights in the room flickered violently. A loud crash echoed from the hallway, and I turned in time to see a figure step into the doorway. It was tall and shadowy, barely human, with glowing eyes that locked onto ours. Get away from the window! The woman shouted, her voice slicing through my panic. I yanked the girl back, heart pounding. The figure moved closer, its form shifting like smoke. My breath caught in my throat. "Run!" I yelled, adrenaline pumping through my veins. As the shadow lunged, I grabbed the little girl's hand, and we sprinted back into the hallway. The sounds of chaos surrounded us, more footsteps, cries echoing like a cacophony. Nothing made sense, and I didn't know what we were running from, but I knew one thing. Whatever that thing in the doorway was, it wanted us. I pushed forward, adrenaline coursing as I sought another escape. The fear wrapped around me, but one thought burned brighter: we had to survive. That's when I noticed the voices again, a whispering in the shadows that didn't belong. The corridor twisted, and I took a sharp turn, desperate to find a new exit. But then I found myself facing the wrong end of a long, dark tunnel, and a creeping realization settled in. It wasn't just us running, something was hunting, and it was gaining ground. The tunnel stretched in front of me, dark and unwelcoming. The whispering grew louder, and with it, a primal fear surged through me. I turned to the girl beside me, her eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. "We have to keep moving," I whispered, my voice barely above a murmur. I took a shaky step forward, heart racing as the unsettling feeling settled deeper in my bones. The shadows flickered around us, and for a moment, I felt the walls pulse, as though the entire place were alive and watching. We pressed onward, guided by the distant echoes of our own footsteps. Then, to my right, a door stood ajar, its frame filled with a more promising light. "Over there!" I pointed, and we hurried toward it, the urgency of the moment pushing us faster. As I reached for the handle, a chill swept through the air, freezing me in place. The whispers sharpened, rising into frantic cries that buzzed against my eardrums. I hesitated for just a second before throwing open the door. It led to a small room, cluttered with old chairs and remnants of life. On the walls hung photos, more children, their faces blurry and distorted, as if the images were fighting to remain intact. I stepped back, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. "Don't look," I urged the girl, pulling her away from the wall. We had to move. "Where is everyone?" she asked, her voice small, choked with fear. I opened my mouth to answer, but it caught in my throat. The room felt empty in a way that pressed down on my chest. Suddenly, there was a loud thud from the corridor behind us, followed by the echo of hurried footsteps. "Go!" I shouted, and we darted through the door to the next room. Just as I stepped inside, the bright lights flickered once more, illuminating rows of cots, blankets tossed aside as if someone had left in a rush. My stomach turned. This couldn't have been a regular hospital stay. A wail drifted through the air, and then another voice joined it, a chorus of cries resonating from somewhere deeper in the building. I clenched the girl's hand tighter, terror coursing through me as I turned to face her. "Stay close to me," I pleaded again. "Where are we?" she whispered, glancing around as shadows danced at the edges of the room. I didn't have an answer. The whispers bore down, merging into a single, insistent message: "Help us." "It's not safe here," I whispered back, my instincts screaming at me to keep moving. "We need to find an exit." I turned away from the cots, hoping to find another door, another way out, when suddenly, something caught my eye. In the corner of the room, an old tape recorder whirred to life, belting out a message as if it had been waiting just for us. "The line is drawn," it crackled, distorted and loud. "Do not cross the line. They come for those above the line." My blood ran cold as the realization set in. We were being herded. The shadows weren't just whispers, they were watching, gauging our every move. In that moment, the door slammed shut behind us, plunging the room into darkness. I wrapped my arms around the girl, my breath quickening. "What do we do?" she asked, panic threading her voice. The shadows shifted, creeping toward us swiftly. "We fight," I declared, panic sharpening into determination. We would not be taken. But a more pressing question gnawed at the back of my mind: what truly lay behind that line? And what would happen to us if we crossed it? I took a breath, feeling the oppressive darkness swirl around us. The faint sound of our quickened breaths filled the space, and it felt as if time had stopped. The whispers intensified, echoing my thoughts, urging me to make a choice. "Do you think they know where we are?" the girl asked, her eyes darting around, gleaming with fear. "I don't know," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. "But we can't stay here. We have to find a way out." As I turned, the walls seemed to shift closer, as if tightening like a noose. Frantic, I pressed my palm against the solid surface, searching for any sign of weakness. Behind me, the girl stifled a sob, and I felt a wave of anger rise. I couldn't let her break down here. "Help us," the whispers echoed, now a desperate plea. Suddenly, a beam of light shot through a gap under the door, momentarily illuminating the room and revealing the cots in stark clarity. I could see a discarded teddy bear lying on the floor, its glass eyes staring blankly up at us. It felt wrong. "No," I murmured, shaking the thought away. "We need to keep moving." With no way to open the door, I scanned the room for another exit. My heartbeat drummed in my ears as I spotted a window high above. It looked small, perhaps too small for us to escape through. Still, it was better than waiting in the dark. I had to try. "Can you stand on my shoulders?" I asked the girl, feeling a sense of urgency. "Yeah. I think so," she answered, her voice wavering. I crouched down, and she climbed onto my back, her weight resting lightly against me. She reached up, stretching to grab the bottom of the window frame. I could feel her trembling as she pulled herself higher. "Come on, you can do it!" I encouraged, glancing behind us to see the shadows creep closer, their movements almost fluid. With a final burst of determination, she managed to grip the ledge and hoist herself up. But just as she teetered on the edge, a guttural sound resonated from the corridor. It was deep and chilling. I froze, my heart dropping at what it could mean. "Quick! Get through!" I shouted, hoping she could hear me above the noise. "I don't think I can," she cried, panic seeping into her tone. I could feel the shadows spilling into the room now, coiling and twisting like smoke. I grabbed her ankles, the last part of her that I could hold on to, and pulled. "You have to try." With a surprising surge, she climbed through the window, just as the door slammed open behind me. Light flooded in, revealing shapes moving swiftly, shadowed figures gliding into the room. "Jump down," I urged. I could see her hesitate, the fear etched across her face. But then, with a deep breath, she jumped, landing hard on the ground. I didn't think. I leapt for the window after her, barely fitting through the small opening. As I landed beside her, I spotted the figures rushing towards us, their faces obscured in darkness. We didn't have time to think. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing her hand and sprinting away, the chaos behind us building rapidly. But just then, I saw at the line. A thin, shimmering barrier glowed faintly across the ground. My chest tightened. We were running out of time, and I didn't know if crossing it would save us or seal our fate. When we reached the shimmering line, I skidded to a halt. My instincts screamed at me to keep running, but something pulled at my curiosity. I turned to the girl, panting. "What do you think it is?" "I don't know. It looks like it's alive," she replied, her voice shaky as she took a cautious step back. The glow pulsated softly, casting eerie shadows that danced around our feet. The figures behind us grew louder, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. "Can you feel it?" I asked, instinctively reaching out a hand, my fingers trembling closer to the edge of the light. "Like it's watching us?" "Don't touch it!" she shouted, a hint of panic lacing her words. "What if it's dangerous?" "I'm not sure it's dangerous," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But we have to find out." I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. The whispers had quieted, replaced by a low hum that seemed to resonate in my bones. Without overthinking, I stepped closer to the barrier. As soon as my foot crossed the line, the world shifted around me. Everything beyond the line faded into darkness while a vivid scene unfolded before my eyes. A hospital room appeared, sterile and bright. I could see the bed, the machines beeping softly, and a child lying there, pale and still. What is happening? I whispered, entranced by the vision. Are you okay? The girl grabbed my arm, pulling me back. It was as if she could feel the wave of energy radiating off the barrier. I don't know. But look! I pointed. The child suddenly blinked, eyes wide with fear, searching for something or someone just out of view. Get back! She urged, tugging me further from the line. It's not safe. I hesitated, torn between the strange pull of the scene and the urgent reality of our situation. But we might learn something. There could be answers here. Just then, the hum from the barrier escalated into a deafening roar. My vision blurred, and the hospital room flickered like a faulty light. The child's fearful expression morphed into anger, their mouths silently shouting. I felt the pressure in my head swell, as if the child was reaching out for help, demanding to break free. Stop! The girl shook my arm violently, her eyes wide with fear. We can't stay here. With sheer force, she tugged at me, trying to pull me away from the line. I felt the grip of that vision loosening, and suddenly the scenery collapsed into a dark void. I stumbled backwards, feeling disoriented. We need to run, she urged, anxiety spilling over her words. The figures were closer now, shadows looming heavily, their whispered threats slicing through the air. Wait, I said, panic tightening my throat, what if we just crossed? We could escape them. In that heartbeat, I felt the power of the barrier. But deep down, a flicker of doubt lingered. What if stepping back onto the other side was a mistake? Trust me, I shouted, dragging her towards the line. We crossed together. It's our only chance. Her eyes searched mine for reassurance. And as the darkness crept closer, I made the leap, leaping across the threshold with her at my side. But the moment we landed on the other side, everything went dark again, plunging us into a chilling silence. Then, just as I began to collect my thoughts, a new sound emerged, a faint, plaintive cry. I turned to the girl, the growing unease in her eyes echoing my own fears. What have we done? I gasped, awake, the familiar sounds of the hospital lobby flooding my senses. The chaos had faded, but an unsettling quiet hung thick in the air. Confused, I glanced around, disoriented yet relieved. I was back behind my desk, the little girl nowhere in sight. My heart raced as I scanned the area for any sign of the woman, or the shadows. Nothing but the usual bustling crowd, though an ominous aura still lingered. But then, just as reality settled back into focus, an ache loomed within me, a feeling I couldn't shake, a gnawing reminder of the faces I couldn't forget. I rubbed my eyes, heart pounding in my chest. Was it all a hallucination? Had I dreamed it all, or was there a darker truth hidden in the corners of this place? I could still see those hollowed eyes, the shadows that seemed alive. Barely holding back panic, I glanced toward the entrance. The hospital's double doors swung wide, and a woman stepped in, her features strikingly familiar. It was her, the woman who had been with us in the shadows. She scanned the lobby with that same urgent look, and our eyes locked. Something flickered between us, then a moment of recognition. But before I could move, she darted out, melting into the crowd as if she was never there. I rose from my chair, feeling the weight of something larger than myself. With every hesitant step, I reached for the lobby doors, but a knot formed in my stomach as something in the back of my mind screamed at me to turn back. What lay beyond those doors? Would I find the girl, or would I be swallowed by the same darkness that almost consumed us before? Patients lined the reception counter, oblivious to the chaos I had witnessed. Are you okay? An older patient asked as I approached, startling me from my thoughts. But I barely heard them. The words echoed, blending into the stream of noises in my head. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a nearby mirrored wall. My eyes looked tired, haunted by unspeakable things. What if I'm still dreaming? I pondered aloud, the woman's face still fresh in my mind. I turned back to the front desk, hoping to distract myself with the mundane, but feeling utterly disconnected from everything. Such normality felt out of reach after what I'd seen. More patients wandered in, and as I sifted through forms and paperwork, I couldn't shake the feeling I was missing something. The line formed, nearly identical to the one I'd defaced before, though I could no longer distinguish the ordinary from the extraordinary. Each face was a mere marker on a timeline that blurred reality. And then, just as the tension began to ease, a little girl entered with a unicorn toy in her hand. My breath caught in my throat. It was her! Where have you been? I wanted to ask, rushing forward instinctively, but I hesitated, caught between the desire to protect her and the fear of what could happen again. Then, the shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. I shot a glance around the lobby. Were they back? Had anything truly changed? Was this normal? Or was it all a facade built upon something terrifying? As the patients surrounded me with their constant murmuring, the air felt heavy, laden with the questions that plagued my mind. I made my way back to my desk, heart racing. "Stay close, little one," I whispered under my breath, unsure if she could hear me. But as she smiled at me, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd truly protected her, or just brought her closer to the very brink of danger we had escaped. In that moment, I realized I was caught not just in a cycle of fear, but within a mystery that demanded answers. What had really happened? Why were those families standing in line? As I stood there, feeling the weight of shadows press against my back, I knew one thing for certain: whatever waited beyond the ordinary where reality and nightmares collided was still lurking just outside the threshold, ready to blur the lines again. And for the first time, I understood it had only just begun.